we have all got different experience of what we do, and we've all got different experience of how services have been. That does not mean that you're right or you're wrong. It just means that is your view. And as long as we're not derogatory, as long as we're not disrespectful, it is good to share those views. All adults treat each other as equals. I leave my badge at the door. I've got a fancy title. I've got a great business card up there, but actually I'm here sort of as a partner in the room with colleagues across sort of Birmingham to work together. And by colleagues, that's all the people on this call for me. You help me move my services forward, and you give me a really good overview of where I don't get things right. So all equals in the room. Check everyone's got an understanding of what's said. So we try and not use jargon, fancy words, or sort of, we try and keep things simple. That works really well for me. I'm dyslexic. I read some words and it makes absolutely no sense. And whilst I'm listening, I'm having to Google what that word means. So, and if that's me, and I've got degrees and I've got masters and everything else, and yet I still like things simple. So let's include everyone. Right, how today's meeting is going to work. I'm going to pass over to Simon, and he's going to take us through these next few moments.
Yeah, so essentially, again, just following on from there. So although I think everyone's been here, I'm Simon Fairs. I'm part of the citizen involvement team, and our role is to get you guys involved in the services. But today what we would like is to keep everyone on mute, and the reality is that we do get a lot of feedback in these meetings. There's nothing we can do about it, and especially if I can see many of you are wearing ear pods things, and Angela, who's going to be speaking, it can be distracting, can also be painful. So as somebody who has a neurodiverse difficulties, that feedback can be quite difficult. So we will give you a chance. If you want to comment, you've got the chat box. We have other ways of doing it, and we will today have a full session where we're going to have, you know, discussion openly, but all questions come through the chair. So if you want to chat, I'll show you how to do that in a minute, but just put your hand up. And if you can't work out, put your hand up. If you wave, which Gina and Mick are brilliant at, we know that they want to do it. And then last but not least, it's an important one. There might be subjects, and we had this at the last People for Public Services, that fall just outside of what we're discussing today. But what we don't want to do is not keep them, not have them. So what we'll do is we'll record them, and we'll either contact the individual who raised it, or we'll organise something around that to have further discussions. So the idea is we car park it. It's safe. You don't have to pay anything for it, Gina and Mick. It's all fine. So right. So to actually use what you should be hopefully seeing is the presentation. Probably me right now speaking, but up at the top, you've got your ability to. This will give you ability to select the chat and pop any question you want in there, and you've got the emojis there that you can clap, but most importantly, you can put your hand up. The other way we're going to be working today is through something called Mentimeter, and what that does is gives you the chance to physically, you know, using a mobile phone or another browser, if you open one, to write comments, and they will appear live on the screen. We will do that in a moment. We'll have a little go at that in a moment, but it's a really great way. And what will happen at that point is my colleague Adib will put the link in the chat and the QR code in the chat. So without further ado, I'm just going to hand back to you, John, or shall I just invite Angela to join?
Let's just invite Angela to join.
Yeah. So Angela, I'm going to spotlight you at the moment. There you go. So you should see mainly Angela and the presentation today. So Angela, over to you.
Thank you, Simon. So good afternoon, everyone. And kind of just to say again, my name's Angela Huggins. I'm one of the Safer Neighbourhoods Partnership Managers within the Community Safety Team at Birmingham City Council. The team supports what's called the Community Safety Partnership, which is the city's multi-agency partnership responsible under the Crime and Disorder Act to work together to form and implement strategies to prevent and reduce crime and antisocial behaviour, and also to work in partnership to reduce serious violence in the city. I'd like to kind of just start by thanking the People for Public Services Forum for this opportunity to come and talk to you about the strategy that we want to develop to reduce serious violence, but also for Simon and the team for the support that they've given me, kind of just getting me on this platform. Most importantly, though, I'd like to hear from yourselves about what you think about the strategy that we're looking to develop, but also whether you think we are going along the right lines in terms of some of the priorities that we are proposing to put into the strategy. And I just also want to mention that I'm joined today by my colleague, Kashana Bowie, who's our Youth Prevention Program Manager. So Kashana has recently joined us and works across the community safety team and the violence reduction partnership in the city. So just in case I'm not able to answer any questions, Kashana might jump in with some questions. So to move on to why we are looking to develop this strategy. Apart from the fact that it's a key priority for us as a city, there is also a new serious violence duty which is coming in early 2023. So this duty sits within what's called the Police, Crime, Sentencing and Courts Act 2022. And its intention is to reduce violent crime and tackle what's defined as its root causes. And I'll come back later to talk about what we mean by root causes. And I think we also would like some input from yourselves about what you think about that as well. So it's one of a number of measures within that piece of legislation. But just to set out what it requires from us. So under the duty, we are asked to work as a multi-agency partnership. And that partnership includes the local authority, the police, the probation service, youth offending teams, fire and health. And the intention is that we work to reduce and prevent serious violence. And in terms of Birmingham, that partnership is the Community Safety Partnership that I mentioned earlier. We also need to consult with youth custody and educational institutions, as well as prisons, as we work through the requirements of this duty. We need to engage with voluntary and community sector. And that's one of the reasons that we really wanted to come and have these conversations with yourselves today, because that's a real key aspect of us developing this strategy, but also developing a strategy that works for the communities that we want to engage with. And another key aspect is that we kind of engage with children and young people. A lot of the violence that we've seen has involved children and young people, so it's really crucial that we engage with children and young people as well as we develop this strategy. We're also asked to develop what's called a problem profile. So it means that we bring together all the data that we have as partners so that we can better understand where serious violence occurs in the city and the people that are being affected by the serious violence. So that's what they're defining as a problem profile. And then from all of that, we then need to develop a strategy which sets out what we're currently doing, but also what we intend to do going forward to respond to the issue of serious violence in the city. And these are just some of the key things that we've been asked to respond to under this particular duty. And I kind of just want to pause there because I know there's some terminology in there that maybe people might not be comfortable with. And I just wanted to see if there was anybody that wanted any clarification at that point.
There doesn't seem to be any hands up at this point, Angela. So
Okay.
obviously, again, if anyone's got any questions, just pop it in the chat.
So part of what we were going to do at this point, Simon, was then to move into that first Mentimeter where we asked people to kind of think about what serious violent crime means.
Yeah.
And to put that into the Mentimeter so that we can have a look at how people themselves define that.
So it's a really simple question in many ways. What do you think? So it's not what we think. It's not what do you, as somebody living here, what do you think serious violent crime means? We've done this as a bit of a word cloud. Deep has put in the links, etc., so that you could look to get there. If you can't get access to, and you can't get your Mentimeter working at this point, don't worry too much. You can always add into, or you can tell us and we can add it in. That's one of the other ways that we can do it for you. But you can just write it in the chat. What it does mean is that this begins to create a map of things that are of a similar nature. So Shamsa has put in the chat gang on gang violence, domestic violence, assault. Mike has put I think it's more a question at the minute. Is the duty totally new? We'll come back to those questions in a minute, Mike. And oh, there's two mics. So the two mics, we'll come back to your questions in a minute. But we are beginning to get people populating the thing. So we've got antisocial behaviour, domestic violence, rape, injury, mugging, increased prison sentence. I'm not sure if that's a serious violence crime or if that's an answer to serious violence crime. Why the word is serious, that's interesting. Maybe the person who's wrote why the word is serious, or is it why is the word serious? That might be a question there. Again, we can kind of come back to that. Just give it a couple of minutes to see if anyone else wants to put anything in there, and then we will move on. So we've got, I have to turn my head slightly sideways, and we have murder, sexual assault. So at the moment, oh, we've got more. It's coming through. Hitting the battens. Again, not sure what that is. Stabbing, punching, assault, murder. So what I'm going to do is, and again, if you want to continue to keep populating this, please feel free. We have got more, but it's really about us. And what will happen is at the moment, the largest word that is appearing is the word that most people are writing. So actually, one of the serious violent crimes that people are seeing in Birmingham is unfortunately rape as a high priority for them around serious violent crime. So I'm going to bring in the next slide for you, Angela. And back over to you.
Okay, so to answer the question about why, I thought it was on you then, serious, the word serious is included. So there is that, we haven't included it here, but I can certainly share it. There is a definition for violence. The serious aspect of it, as defined in the government serious violence strategy. So it relates. So let me read it as it says. So the government serious violence strategy defines serious violence for the purpose of its reduction and prevention as offences including public space violent crimes. And they tend to associate that with people under 25. Homicides, which again, as unfortunately involved a lot of young people. And then violence against the person, which may include both knife and gun crime. And that is part of where the serious element came to, because there was an increase around certainly knife and gun crime involving young people. More recently, domestic abuse and sexual offences are now included within the definition. So although it says 2018, there's been some changes as part of this duty, which has now included domestic abuse and sexual offences within the definition. And then it goes on to refer to areas of criminality where serious violence or its threat is inherent, such as in county lines drug dealing. And just to explain county lines drug dealing, just in case anybody's unsure about what that is. So that tends to refer to criminal activity in which drug dealers in major cities establish networks for the supply and sale of drugs in towns and rural areas. And they do this through a dedicated mobile phone line. So that's where the county lines element comes from. And there's been some slight changes to how they operate their county lines, but that's the kind of broad definition of it.
Mm.
So that's the definition that we are proposing to use within the strategy, and that's the definition that is recommended that we use. When they ask us to produce a problem profile, so part of the problem profile is that if it brings up anything else that's local to Birmingham that we might want to include in that definition, then we might want to expand that definition. So at the moment, we are talking about serious youth violence and whether there should be a separate definition for serious youth violence, or whether everything is captured within this definition.
Gina and Mick, we're going to have questions in a minute. Could you mind just hanging on just for a minute, just while we get through? Is that? Oh, they put a hand down. You honestly, we will go through all the questions and everything. We've got loads of time, but I think if
it was only a comment, it wasn't a question.
Oh, okay. Quickly then, go for it.
No, it was just to say that these boy scooter things, they use them to deliver the drugs.
Yeah. Thanks, Gina. So shall I move it on to the next question?
Shall I pick out the public space violence?
Yeah. I mean, if you're happy to pick out some of these questions at the minute, and it might be that, so we've got Mike H as that could be useful to have an equivalent of the positive psychology approach. Could it be? I would imagine that would be. And then is the duty totally new, or had it started from another previous initiative? And that's from the other Mike.
So shall I just pick off those? So
yeah, please. And then
the duty is a new duty. Although there's a bit of a history with it. So in 2014 to 2018, there was an increase in what they defined as serious violence. So that was around knife crime, gun crime, and homicides. And after that, the government decided to introduce the Serious Violence Strategy 2018. They also consulted on the possibility of bringing in a duty that would place certain responsibilities on local authorities and community safety partnerships. So that's where the duties come from. It's been out for consultation for a period of time. So, and it is currently in its final stages of consultation. But because it sits within that piece of legislation, there are many other actions within that legislation that were debated through Parliament. So it has taken some time for it to go from an idea that there would be a new serious duty to actually almost being in place now. And even though I'm talking to you about it now, it won't officially come in until January 2023. And that's because they are currently consulting on what they call draft guidance, which will support those of us in the agencies to work with that duty as it comes in. So, but it is a totally new duty that they're bringing in. And sorry, what was the other question?
So the last one that was, so you had Donna's was, what does public space violent crime mean?
Okay, so it tends to refer to violence which takes place publicly. So on the streets, in the city centres. Some of it relates to violence that takes place at what's defined as the nighttime economy. But generally, it's played out on the streets during the daytime, during the nighttime, but involving. So, it's not, for example, taking place in the home necessarily. It's violence that's taking place publicly on the streets.
Great. Brilliant. Thank you, Angela. And I've just put up, and what is great, before I'd even ask the question, people are populating this, and hopefully you can see it, Angela. So we've just asked another question. And again, please feel free to populate. Again, there's no wrong answers. If you can't get it in there, put it in the chat. We'll pick that up. What do you think are the root causes of serious violent crime? And there, the largest one at the minute is poverty. We've got trauma, lack of CCTV, no cops, lack of opportunity, I can't say that word, resourcelessness. I think that's a really great word. I think it's a new word. I've not heard that before. I like that. I might borrow it. Thank you, whoever wrote that. Unemployment, drug dealing, racism, coercion, failure to prosecute, inequity. So it's interesting because we've got a bit of what the cause is, what we beat, but also we've got that, maybe it's about having, other things to kind of push back, as it were. Absent parents, we've got upbringing. So I'll give it another couple of minutes. I don't know if anyone wants to put Shamsa has put, there is a traditional fear of stranger danger with some crimes. What percentage of violent crimes are the perpetrators known to the victims? And maybe that's something we can pick up as we go along. And, but I think that's a really good question. I don't want to not have it answered, but I'm just trying to think of as we go along. So I'm going to move this on. So we will pick that up, Shamsa, honestly. I'm going to bring it so that, again, we've had one more little thing. Violent parents, trying to think, mental health issues. That's another interesting one. Childhood poverty. It's when I've got to lean my head sideways. I think I've read those. So I get a good workout when I do this meeting, Angela. You get to really work your shoulders. So I'm going to bring it back to you, Angela. There you go.
So I want to kind of just set the context for the root causes, really.
Yeah.
So through the strategy, what we'll, and it is a bit of language, but I'll try and explain it. What we will try to do is to take what's defined as a public health approach to violence. And what that means is that we will try and focus on understanding these root causes. Because if we can understand the root causes and we can intervene early enough, then we should be able to prevent violence from taking place. So as it says in the kind of slide there, violence is preventable, not inevitable. And tackling the root causes can improve the health and well-being of individuals and communities. And then a lot of what you've all kind of referenced is there, and I think there are some things that we haven't necessarily included there, but are definitely included in the feedback that you've given. And it's understanding those root causes and understanding what we can do to respond to them. And when I say we, I mean we as a city, because obviously there are a number of strategies that are being developed in this city. There are a number of services that are being delivered in the city, and it's how we can tackle some of these root causes through that. So, for example, where they talk about abuse, loss, and trauma, and we'll come on to it later, but this is one of the areas that we would like to prioritize within the strategy, because we understand that impacts on potentially somebody becoming involved in a violent situation, but also it's how we then respond to the needs of that individual that has experienced that abuse, loss, and trauma. Mental health comes up quite a lot, both in terms of young people and in terms of adults. And it's certainly one of the things that we would like to look at in terms of, is this something that we should prioritize? And then clearly our young people are a key focus for us, both in terms of them getting the level of education that they should be able to receive, but also that they get the right support to be able to do that as well. So have we moved on to the next slide, Simon?
We have, yeah.
Okay. So on this slide, you'll see that we've started to look at what we might prioritize as part of this strategy. And so if I just run through them very quickly. So the better partnership working, as it says in that duty, is that we need to take a partnership approach to how we respond to violence. It isn't just a law enforcement issue, it's a partnership response that's needed to be able to tackle that. Now, we do have an existing partnership within the city, which is the Birmingham Community Safety Partnership, but it isn't just about that group of people, it's wider than that. And it's kind of understanding how we make sure that other people can be part of that partnership and part of that discussion. The prevention and early intervention is that response to say that if we get in early enough, then it should be possible to prevent violence from happening. The building community resilience is that obviously this violence plays out in our communities, and it's what can we do to support communities to be able to respond to that, but also to understand what that violence looks like, to understand what they can do to respond to it, but also where they might need to go to get advice if that's necessary. And again, the learning about the impact of trauma of violent crime, particularly on our young people, but clearly across the communities as well, it tends to then play out in how young people are treated if they've suffered trauma or loss, but also adults and younger adults as well. So it's about how we deliver our services, recognizing that there's potential trauma that somebody's experienced, and the way that they receive the services from us might add to that trauma. And what we want to do is so the term that's being used is to become a trauma-informed city, so that the way that we respond is recognizing that trauma and the impact that that might have on somebody. And then again, young people are quite a key focus for us, but not the entire focus of the strategy. But at the moment, because there are a lot of people that are being drawn into some of this activity, what we want to do is to provide opportunities for young people to thrive, both in terms of the educational opportunities, but also in terms of employment and a sense of belonging and feeling that they belong in the city. And I think recently we did a survey with some young people because we want to understand how young people feel about how they're being reflected, but also the violence that is occurring in the city. So we've had quite a lot of feedback from young people about wanting to be part of the conversation and part of the discussion. And I think the first of these meetings that we had, we did have your young people's group involved as well. And then one of the things that they said to us about through the survey was this thing about a perception of violent crime. So for young people, sometimes, for example, if they see images of knives being taken off the streets, they may not have felt unsafe, but seeing that might add to their sense of fear. So sometimes we just need to consider about how we want to get our messages across. And then there was a question about whether it's possible to combine our responses around health, employment, and education as a city. And then whether what we can do to reduce reoffending was another one of the priorities that had been put forward.
Brilliant. So I'm just going to move it on. Mike's put a couple of comments in the chat. I'll just let you know that I wasn't aware of this. 6 of the top 13 wards in the UK exist in Birmingham for fuel poverty, thus proving that, you know, poverty and inequality is quite bad here. And then he talks about how which I think is a really interesting thing, is that actually speaking to young people, actually having a skate park and soccer fields would be good, because they've actually shut down. So again, I think that does, when we start talking about, you know, the providing for a thriving young people, that's definitely part of it. So having listened to what Angela's just said, we'd like to ask you again through Mentimeter, and if you can't get to Mentimeter, put in there whether you think those, and again, those priorities are fluid. You know, that's our thinking, but in the whole, do you think they're good? Do you think they're, you know, you do agree with them? Are you unsure? If you want more, and Adiba's just put those titles into the chat there so you can have a look. Again, be honest. If you think it's not the way forward, you know, you disagree, then please feel, you know, put disagree. So I'm going to give that a moment, give both me and Angela a chance to have a drink of water maybe, while you populate that, guys.
Simon, we need some music.
I could sing, but we really don't need that in our lives. So at the minute, we've got 2 point. That's interesting. Oh, it's suddenly jumped. We got 3.3 people on the call saying that 2.8. It's very fluid at the moment. So 2.4 disagree. And that's really interesting because we're going to move to the point where we begin to openly discuss this. So I think that will be a really interesting part of the discussion. Agree is jumped to 3 now. We've only had 6 people who have commented, so I'm not quite sure how we got 0.2, but we have got a 0.2. So at the moment, the substantive of the meeting is agreeing. I'll give it a few more minutes, but like I say, this is just a temperature test in many ways, to see what people think. I am going to just move it on to the next one, which might be an interesting for those who have put disagree, because what would you add? We've kind of talked about some of the ideas, and in here, this gives you the opportunity to kind of write what you think would be useful, you know. So taking Mike's, where I'm not sure what I'm supposed to be agreeing or disagreeing with, Mike. So if you just go up above your comment, you'll see a list of themes that we're looking to maybe do workshops, etc. around. Apologies we didn't make that clear, but that's what we're looking for. But again, we're going to open this up to discussion in a minute so we can pick up on some of those things. Artists promoting crime appeals. That's an interesting one. I'm not quite sure what that is. Whoever wrote that, if you want to come in and just explain what that means, that'd be quite interesting. I'm just waiting to see if there's others, because normally it starts slow and then it goes very quick. And then at least with this, I don't need to crane my neck, but I will have a drink of water. And again, you need better punishment system, a lot more police. Waiting for others. I don't know, Mike, if you've managed to put a comment on the last one, or if you wanted to put in here. And again, if you can't use the Mentimeter, please just write in the chat. And in a moment, we will be, like I say, we will be opening this up to discussion amongst us all, because there's enough of us on here to just, we won't need to break into breakout rooms. A focus on addicts, helping them come off substances. Very interesting. And just on that, we do have a separate strategy. There's been 2 people for public services before on that. So whoever wrote that, it's something that maybe we can put you in touch with, that strategy and that work that's ongoing. Government allows alcohol. Okay, that's maybe somebody who doesn't think alcohol. Not just at what reduces violence, but what builds peace, voice, participation, justice, opportunity, education, environment, etc. That's a really great way of putting it. Kashina has put, and again, apologies if I'm not saying that right, Kashina. I think I've tried to say it. Is that first comment maybe about artists thinking musicians specifically who refer to committing crime influencing young people? An interesting, but yeah,
I'm not sure, but it could be. That is a
Yeah.
point that we've kind of heard before, and
Yeah.
you know, we do know that there are whole teams in the police that are looking into sort of specific types of music that are potentially influencing young people. But I didn't know if that's what it was maybe referring to. And also, it's Kashena, but do not worry at all.
Sorry, I will now. Kashena, right.
No, it is a tongue twister, but I'm also referred to as Kesh, so feel free to go for that. That's easier.
Yeah. Thank you for letting me off the hook completely. So we've got the media promotes fear agenda, strengthen the family structure, setting boundaries, encourage personal responsibility, managing and regulating social media and its negative impact on privacy and mental health. No outsiders. Police need to be from the community, of the community, for the community, not against the community. Personally, for me, education and information, case studies. How do you see employers contributing, say, via taster days? PS, I'm not sure if that is PS, but YouTube is a source. I agree with that. We use YouTube quite a lot. Example, current series of black and white pieces on lifestyles. You need to reduce the list as it looks at, you need to reduce the list as, like most things, the resourcing to achieve that aims won't be available. So that's again an interesting. And just on that, what Kanisha said is that if it's a conversation we've had a lot. What's Birmingham most famous for at the moment? Peaky Blinders, and there's a celebration of criminality there that for some people, may be acting on. So it's quite an interesting one. I'm just going to pause that for a moment. I'm going to move that next to the breakout room. So those will keep running. We were going to break out into breakout rooms, but with them not being, so we had quite a lot of people sign up and we've got a really good turnout, but I don't think we need to break out into breakout rooms. I can see John smiling. So what would be quite interesting, and we'll use and this is where you get the chance to chat. Did you want to say anything before I bring in people? I'm going to stop spotlighting you, Angela, so everyone now is equal.
Just in terms of the chat's moved on, but the comment about learning from other cities and countries. So we have, as part of the kind of pre-work that we were doing, looked at other strategies that exist across the country. And clearly we were also looking at strategies that exist within this region as well, so within the West Midlands. And so the kind of taking the public health approach is something that a lot of the strategies are focused on, and that's because it's about understanding what the problem is and then trying to put in place a response early enough to try and stop that violence from happening. There are some strategies that are very specifically just around young people. And again, we looked at whether that was the right thing for us to do for this city, but recognizing that it's not just the young people that are involved in this, that actually there are adults that can draw young people into the situation of violence as well. So we wanted a strategy that was for the city and that covered all aspects. And I will kind of pick up Mike's comment about Scandinavia and having a look at that. Just also wanted to say, in terms of the priorities that we've said, we recognize that some of these things might be being dealt with elsewhere. So for example, employment and skills is probably a challenge for the city.
Yeah.
And that's where we'd want to go and look at other strategies that the city's developing around employment and skills and what that looks like. The drug strategy, although it wouldn't be for us in this, we would look at where there's a relationship between that strategy and the strategy that we're trying to develop. So we know that there are a number of strategies, including the domestic abuse strategy, where we would need to make sure that there was a link between what we're trying to achieve and what those strategies have in place.
Brilliant, thank you. So we've got about 30 minutes ish to really open the floor up now, and we wanted to kind of have a, not necessarily the individual lived experience of this person does this, that, but what is it, understanding, you know, local issues and concerns around serious violence. What are your concerns? One of the big things is understanding who are the people most affected or at risk, you know, so who do you think is at risk, etc. What would you like to see happen, and who do you think can make the change? So we're going to open it up. So I think it'd be really interesting. So if you want to now speak, all you need to do is select your hand on your, where it says reactions, and then you will appear on my list and possibly Amanda's and others to say my hand is up, and I will bring you in at that point. So who would like to kick us off? Cavan, sorry. I'm really bad with names today. I'm not normally this bad, but apologies. Cavan.
Thank you. I'll say one thing that's concerning me at the moment, especially on estates, being as I live on one, is the access people have got to drugs and the negative impact and influence that dealers put on young kids. I mean, for example, we've had kids coming into our blocks, vandalising them. You know, we've had them coming up onto the top communal balcony, smoking cannabis and that, and been abusive to the tenants and causing damage and whatnot. And I think really the main thing is going to be around parental responsibility. You know, are the parents really setting boundaries for these kids? Are they actually, do they actually know where they are? Do they know what they're getting up to? Do they communicate with their children? You know, and I think really there needs to be a greater emphasis on things like, for example, Sure Start centres where, you know, parents who may be lacking the skills in raising their kids properly and supporting them properly are given those resources to actually, you know, give the kids a chance to actually grow up properly rather than getting drawn into criminality, you know, taking drugs, getting drawn into county lines gangs, getting drawn into postcode gangs, all those sort of things that have such a negative effects on the community. Because the one thing we have to remember is these kids are going to be the next generation, and if we don't take control of this and take action against this and set boundaries, then I'm afraid society is going to go on a very it's going to go into decline, and we don't want that for anyone. That's in no one's interest, because one, it puts a greater burden on the police and public services. Two, it reduces people's quality of life. And I'd say three, also as well, if you've got a city where you've got huge levels of drug dealing, domestic, violence and whatnot, you know, who's going to want to invest? Who's going to want to create jobs for the future? Who's going to actually put those things in place to actually get people into employment, give them a future, and give them a shot at life? You know, it's just not going to happen.
Right, thank you, Cavan. And just to let you know, we're recording all of the, so we're going to get a transcript of everything that everyone says. So if you don't see me scrolling down massive amount of notes, it's because Teams is doing it for me. But I definitely took some of those there. I'm going to bring in Donna, then Mick or Gina afterwards. So Donna first.
Yeah, I think there's some sort of work on making people feel that they belong to society. I think if you don't feel like you are part of society or have a stake in society, you feel no compulsion to not destroy what is already there. So it's about making people feel that they belong, and also that they're not scared of what's, you know, if they view society as something that is imposed on them rather than being part of it, again, you're more likely to feel the need to tear it down rather than embrace it. But also, you just feel marginalised, and stopping marginalisation is just really important.
Yeah.
As I think so.
Thank you. There's plenty of chats. Maybe I could get John to bring in some of the chats in a minute after Gina and Mick. And so I'm very aware that John's just kind of I pushed him out. Apologies, John. So Mick and Gina first.
Yeah, I just sort of agree with what Kevin had said, really. I mean, there seems to be, I mean, down where Gina lives in Arban, it's very rare that you'd see a police officer. The enforcement officers on the ground are minimal. There's not enough. And a lot of the drugs runs from their houses of multi-occupancy, which aren't policed.
Yeah.
They're privatised, so they've got no authority to see who's in them. I mean, there's been an ongoing issue down by Gina's for years. The police have been, and it's just been left. Then there's, as Gina said earlier, there's voice scooters. They're using that. They're using the electric bikes to run round on. The police are providing them with push bikes, and they're just taking the mickey. There's no deterrent at all. And when you go on about getting into education and jobs, they can earn more running drugs round
than getting a job.
So there's no prospects. So they think, well, why bother with that? And that's what happens.
No, that's brilliant. Thanks, Gina, Mick. John, do you want to pick out anything in the chat while I turn off my phone that's ringing? Apologies, everyone.
There isn't really, Simon. So people have been putting their hands up, or can sort of.
I haven't seen any more hands. That's the only problem.
Could I just make a couple of comments?
Yeah, please, Mike, go for it. Yes, please.
I am totally new into this city. I'm originally from London. Just landed in Birmingham all of 3 months. So I've immigrated from London to Birmingham. I've never joined a forum like this before. Didn't do it in London, but I felt compelled to do it whilst I'm now living in Birmingham. I don't know why, but I feel I should. And from my perspective, never been a victim of crime in London, although crime is horrendous in London, as you can imagine. But I just wanted to say that really, from what I've heard this afternoon, the problems are not new.
Yeah.
The problems are really not new. If we were to ask these questions 10 years ago, it'll be exactly the same. Exactly the same response. Yet we have a new duty. Hence why I asked the question: is the duty something new, or a rehash of something previous? Because the problems are still the same, aren't they? So Mick and Gina stated problems that's been going on for years. So pre the new duty. So therefore, we have got a fundamental problem to solve here. And I think it's going to take something fundamental to get around it. And for me, really, we need somehow to measure what we are doing to show its effectiveness. And also, we just come out of a pandemic. Do we have any stats on what crime was like during the 2 years of COVID? Because that would be good intel for us to use to kind of think, well, okay, so have we got our understanding correct? Because we're all assuming it's youngsters on the edge of a council estate, on the edge of a street, up to no good, on e-scooters or whatever. But is that really the case? I'm not sure. I'm convinced. That is part of the data, but I think there's much more intelligent data out there, which we have got no idea of. Hence why we're losing the battle. Hence why we need something very radical to address this.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you. Kashina. I'm going to get it. I will. Kesh, please. Again. Bloody rubbish today. Go for it.
Definitely go with Kesh. It's much easier. I just wanted to come in there just because I thought there were some really good points from Mike, and thanks for contributing. It was just to say on the data point, just purely because for the serious violence duty, Angela mentioned earlier the problem profile, and that is specifically pulling together a lot of data that we do actually have access to. We are, like you say, because these problems aren't new, we have a wealth of kind of data that we can use, and the serious violence duty coming specifically from what was an alarming rise in serious violence between 2014 and 2018 means that there are some specific parts of that we have been tracking, and because it's a multi-agency approach, we can pull in data from police crime data, but also from our kind of health partners as well. So I think hopefully that just reassures you that we're basing this on some real kind of stats and some like a picture that we're building of what is actually happening. But that's why this forum is really important as well, because it's just so interesting to get actually more of the perception of how that feels in reality. I think it's really important. So thank you for that.
Yeah. Before I bring in Sarah, I think the other thing to go here is that when this is the beginning of a conversation as well, Mike, and others on the call, that actually what we're trying to do here and our aim is for you to come on that journey with us, to help write it, to help try and organize, and then have that overview and scrutiny of, are we doing the right things at the right times, etc. So I've got
Simon, just before you move off, and just to add to what Kashana was saying, there is the potential for us to share some of that data. And I'm not trying to hide anything at all, but it's quite a lengthy document. But we could ask for a summary of that document, or we can give you the actual document itself. But it is quite lengthy. So, but you know, it's available. And it's a document that we are still working on. So there's information at this point, but we know there are other data sources that we need to tap into to be able to build on what we understand. But as I say, the document is available and we can share it.
Yeah, brilliant. Sarah.
Thank you. Yeah, I was very struck by Mike's comment about, you know, this isn't a new problem. I mean, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, you could talk of having had these issues. And whilst I broadly could see the importance of all those priorities you listed, I think somebody else made the point about there's no way we'll have the resources to tackle all of those things well. I mean, inequality, mental health, those two are just huge, you know. So is there an argument for prioritizing something achievable? You know, out of that list, I saw exclusions in school or education or, you know, education opportunities or something. And put a lot of resources into things rather than spread them thinly over a lot of areas. And then, well, people would say nothing works because we're trying to do a little bit of everything. Or pick an area and throw everything at it. I don't know, but something that will have more impact than just trying to spread ourselves very thinly.
No, it's a really good point, actually, Sarah. Thank you. I've got Donna next, and then Cavan again.
I might be being controversial. In fact, I am being controversial.
Surely not, Donna.
Yeah, that's me. As Sarah just pointed out, that, you know, that I think we know how to fix this problem. It's a resource heavy problem to fix, but we can fix it and we know how to do it. And the truth is, have we as a society just decided that this is something that we let happen because it's too expensive to fix? And if that's the case, are we just is this theatre? Are we just talking about this to make it look like we're doing something, when in the truth we're always just going to let it happen because it's cheaper to not do anything? Yeah, there's my controversial statement for the day.
No, thank you, Donna. As always, it's one that is provoking thought and discussion, hopefully. So I've got Cavan next, and then Antonio, and welcome to the meeting.
Thank you. Yeah, in terms of dealing with the problem, I mean, you know, we need to have input from people on the ground, for example, you know, not, you know, people who are well off, who aren't connected to the communities where there's issues, but actually have, you know, actually have people making the decisions at the top who are going to live with them. So, for example, say for example, if in Harborne we've got an issue with drug dealing going on or kids going astray, you know, we need to have people with actual lived experience, you know, to actually say, actually, you know, we're going to help input in the policies to deal with issues, rather than, you know, people who've got, like, for example, lots of money and who make decisions, but never have to actually live with the actual results of the or outcomes of those decisions. You know, and I think that goes higher as well into, you know, things like, you know, like politics and think tanks and whatnot. You know, I mean, I'm not going to get into politics here, but I think that goes into things like politics and think tanks and you know, high level positions. You know, is that we need to have people who live in those communities who can actually say, well, actually, we know what the issues are, we know what's causing them, we've got ideas to solve them. You know, we've had to live with them, and actually, we've actually got the total determination to actually deal with these problems because we've had to live with them. So I think it's really, really important that, you know, we have, like, you know, representatives from across the city, you know, you know, to say, you know, we you know, they're gonna have the chance to input into actually coming up with solutions, let people know what the problems are, know what the root causes of them are, and so on, so that we can actually have, you know, a real devolution of sort of like democracy in a way, to sort of like say, actually, we're you know, we're actually getting people who actually get that what these situations are, who actually understand what they are, who understand how they affect people and the serious and the gravity of them. So that's my input.
No, brilliant. Thank you, Kevin. Antonio, and then we'll have John afterwards.
Yeah, hi. Thanks for having me, guys. And sorry I came late, actually.
It's okay, mate. Don't worry. You're here. That's all that matters.
Yeah, I didn't get the. I was taking notes of what you know, some impactful words that came out there from what you guys were saying, just to catch myself, to catch up. But what I can add from the beginning is that I've joined a customer forum type role already recently, Longhurst Group. So I'm their scrutiny team member there, and that seems to be something from, you know, triggered from the top down as part of the white papers and green papers on social housing. Even from a citizen and tenant, I'm a tenant for that group as well, for Longhurst Group. So it's a peculiar relationship. And live today, yesterday, I think this is about, correct me if I'm wrong, this forum's about, is it about violence? Is it about certain types of violence? Yeah. Ooh. Well, from from a tenant's perspective, like live recently, as of yesterday, there was indeed an incident where a neighbour's windows got broken, and if it was not for me intervening the first time, you know, the neighbourly thing to do, then the person, a tenant would have been wounded or injured, and, you know, then we look at, you know, how these things dealt with when they're reported at landlord level. It's been 6 months since the gate or any secure area, you know, basic ground maintenance was really taken seriously. So while I took the position to join the scrutiny team, it was to explain these phenomena from a social science perspective, try and market solutions. We're probably familiar on solutions. One thing I wanted to add about solutions, about sustainable development strategies, one of the peculiar things I recognise in an interconnected relationship is the types of crime, types of mindsets, the types of environments the crime takes place in and nurtures and cultivates. Online, digital media has a effect, obviously, and there's ethics around that. But I know from a housing perspective, there is single digital platforms being used soon. And from a Department for Work and Pensions perspective, single digital platforms being used soon, or if not in place already. But by the time they filter down to the dependency or interdependency or independence of the client, customer, or tenant, there is a lot of after effects from that micromanagement. Yes, tenants is being paid, housings of multiple occupancies, where people are being thrown there after prison or after coming straight out, and on. There's a lot of serious cases that are spilled over into my neighbourhood, and yesterday could have been serious and violent crime if it was handled the best it could have been.
Oh,
So the digital response to these things, you know, if we talk one thing I leave, if we're talking about platforms going forward, then all of these things will be solved on a digital platform, some peculiar way. I'm aware of this. This is part of the World Economic Forum's sustainable social development strategies that are filtered through from the top down. But the effect from a tenant level, and even as a scrutiny team members level, the speed at which these things are getting turned over into solutions rather than identifying problems is not that fast at all. It's been 4 months, 5 months since Storm used this when the gate was damaged, and that same access point is being used by local yobs to do fly tipping, to attack somebody now, that was yesterday, and break their windows. So I don't know what to call this state of affairs and no police response, but and they got in the face of some women in the Grove as well with their children. These are males, a well-known family that's on the run in the news already. So the dots are not connected until bad news happens.
Brilliant. Thank you, mate. That's really useful. Thank you. I'm just going to bring in John now, and then there are loads of comments coming in the chat, but John first, and then we'll maybe look at some of the comments.
Thanks for your time, Chair and panel.
No, thank you.
Thanks, Antonio. I wanted to pick up really on Kevin's statement around inclusion. So I think when we look at the presentation that Angela and the team have done today, really sort of this is a series of them presentations that they'll be doing, and Angela can fill us in a bit more, but this will be part of a wider opportunity for our citizens, our residents, to really engage in this piece of work. What we've taken is the opportunity to bring this to people, public services, as a discussion, and it really is around sort of the value that the council holds for this forum and the comments. And a lot of things that's saying, and Angela's been nodding throughout this session because she would have been hearing these statements in other sessions. She's done it all then and help inform what we do going forward as a plan. And Angela, do you want us to come in on that?
I think you're absolutely right there, John. There are a lot of so as I've tried to kind of share what we're trying to do, but I don't think it probably gives justice to the seriousness and the number of people that would need to be involved and number of organizations that need to be involved to make a difference with what we're trying to do. And just from listening to what everybody has said, there are so many different aspects to what can be defined as serious violence that we need to look at. So whether it's at a local level and the impact that it's having on some of those local communities, whether it's issues to do with drugs, whether it's issues to do with young people, whether it's issues to do with how agencies respond into some of that. And I kind of just wanted to say there are a number of partners that are part of this conversation. And what we wanted to be able to do is to break that down a bit more. So to talk specifically around some of the issues so that we can have that detail and that we can genuinely capture what people feel about some of these questions. And I think absolutely right. This is not something that's going to be solved overnight, which is why we are taking the time to look at this strategy. And it's not something that we can write in isolation of the community and yourselves. We need that kind of input, and we need that stop and listen to what you're saying so that we can understand that whilst we might be moving forward and saying we need to produce a strategy, that strategy has to be reflective of people's experience. And clearly, depending on where you live in the city, for some people that experience is more sharp than it might be in other parts of the city. That's not to say that it doesn't still occur across the city as a whole, but there are some parts of the city where unfortunately the violence plays out more for those communities, and some of that is tied into some of these wider issues around poverty, around inequalities that have gone on for a number of years. So we understand that there's more than this strategy that will be needed to respond to that, and part of it is that what we want to understand is what does that look like, as people were saying, for those living in the area, because it's easy for us to sit in a little office and write a strategy. That's not what we want to do. What we want to do is to understand how it's impacting, but also to involve people in writing that document and also making a change to what we're doing, because there will be other forums that you can engage with. There will be many more opportunities for us to talk about what we need to do. I think this was a really good opportunity for us to have that starting point. And to know that people are interested to be involved in that discussion. And if there's anything that we haven't picked up, then we will work that through what's in the chat and make sure that we do pick up those issues as well. Because I don't want anybody to feel that they've put something in the chat and we won't pick it up. We will work through the chat and make sure we do respond back to those issues as well.
Yeah, I've got Donna's hand up, so I'm going to bring in Donna.
Yeah, I was just wondering, on the people that are working on this strategy, on a day-to-day, are there any people who have lived experience of dealing with it? And I don't just mean victims of crime, I mean also perpetrators of violent crime working on these strategies with you as part of the team on a day-to-day.
So there is the opportunity for that to happen, I guess is the way for me to say this. And we had a similar thing with the young people. So the young people wanted to be part of the planning group that built this strategy, but they can't attend meetings like this. So we have to do that at a time when it suits them. So if there are people that want to be part of developing this strategy, then there's definitely the opportunity for that to happen, I guess is what I'd like to say to that.
Yeah, just before I bring Antonio in again, is that again, if we were to move on to the next slide and it tells you what the next steps is, the next steps is we want you to be involved in writing this. We want you centrally to be part of, and for me and for I think for us all. Go on, John.
Just to time check you, Sam. You've got less than 15 minutes.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, we literally. Yeah, it's fine. So. Oh, you're frozen. So please, this is a beginning of a conversation, and what we will do is email everybody afterwards and say, please, here's other workshops, here's other things that's going on. Come along, be involved, keep that constant involvement. So, Antonio, you had your hand up and then you put it down. I don't know if you changed your mind, but you'll be the last comment. But you have to make it quite short. Thank you.
Okay, yeah. But working alongside the tenants scrutiny team, or the scrutiny team for Longhurst Group, from a tenant's perspective, what I noticed from the ground level experience being a tenant, but everyone's got a household as well, so it's quite an important role to be able to get data and experience from tenant experiences. I myself have done gardening in my local community, so I know most people, around here anyway, in my community of Acotts Green. But when we deal with quality of tenants or like shared accommodation, I've been here 16 years, but other types of tenants and different types of housing of multiple occupancy and private tenancyship are bringing its own structural problems where it's adding to the problems in communities breaking down rather than strengthening them, because people that are owning the housing multiple occupancies are often friends with the landlords and tenants, and they have their own ulterior motives and experiences, and it's becoming like a cash cow for people coming out of prison being put in those housings of multiple occupancies in areas where the crime rate's already high, like Acotts Green, but it's got small businesses there as well, which are suffering. And obviously me as a tenant, just an everyday life now, it's how can I be expected to work from home or even do scrutiny work if it seems like the average area, a metropolitan area like this is affected by there's no response time to it. So these are major gaps that could be looked at as well.
Thank you. Just going to read out, Shams has put some things in the side. Thank you, Shamsa. It's really great that you've joined us today, because I think it's really important. Experience are nuanced. Absolutely, experiences are nuanced. It is very hard to cater for everyone's experience of violence, but capturing trends is definitely possible and something to work towards. Young people is one layer only. There are multiple layers, which makes this issue ever harder to untangle. But I do think that's really important. And I think this is why we want to, and what we would say to you as I begin to wrap this up and move forward, is talk to people. We want your involvement. We want your thoughts. We want to capture your voice in writing this strategy. So actually, if experiences are nuanced, then we might have a collective, but we might also have very, very different experiences, and that. So the more that we get involved in this, the better. So Angela, what's the next steps?
So our next steps. So we've agreed, I think, that we would like to run more of these workshops, but on specific issues, and it might be possible at that point for us to also bring other people in to those as well. And we want to involve as many people as we can. So I think, you know, we've kind of worked with yourselves, and I think originally this was scheduled for the 14th of June, and there were many people that wanted to be part of that as well, wasn't there, Simon? So my apologies for the fact that that didn't go ahead, but we are certainly committed to holding more of these and to keep having these conversations. And if there's anything specifically that you want us to talk around, then we can put together a workshop around that issue, if that would help. Yeah,
brilliant. And again, I put on there, don't know why I think, I don't know if Adib has got, or somebody, my presentation's got a life of its own at the moment. So it's doing whatever it wants. So, yeah, again, the key there is we want you at the core. So hearing exactly what Kevin has said today, you know, we want to offer to all of you, and we will email you after this saying, would you like to be involved? How would you like to be involved? How can you be involved? And we'll work things around you like we have others. So I think that is you, Angela. So thank you. I'm going to hand back to John, who can thank you officially as the chair.
Okay, brilliant. Thanks, Simon. Angela, on behalf of People for Public Services, thank you very much for today's session. It's been extremely helpful. I think the conversation has been very rich and given you a lot of pause for thought as well, which will feed into the work that you're doing. I think it's really important to acknowledge just how important this work is, but also how complicated too. And it reaches out to all parts of our communities without exception. So we're all incumbent and sort of we're all required to do our part within that. So on behalf of everyone here, thank you very much, and we look forward to the next session that we get to have with you.
Thank you, John, and thank you to everybody that's taken the time, because it does mean that people need to take their time to come and do this, and we really do appreciate it. And as I say, we are more than happy to keep coming back and having these conversations. The duty does not come in until the 2023, but we want to make sure that we've started the conversation before that. This is more than about the duty. This is about getting a strategy that works for the city. So thank you all, and thank you for your time, and look forward to seeing you all again.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you. We've not quite finished yet, John. Carry on.
No, I was going to say, what we got next on the agenda, Simon?
So we've got so the next part is how did you find today's meeting? And one of the things we're trying to do more is evidence. Is this a useful meeting? Was the forum good? We've got so far somebody's put informative and open. If you thought it wasn't, you know, again, we want your honest feedback of what you thought about today's meeting, because what it means is we can then try and build upon that feedback and make sure that we're doing exactly what you want and what we need to hear from you, etc. So I'll give you a couple of moments for Antonio, who has not long just joined us. We're using Mentimeter, so if you've got a mobile, you can use a QR code. You seem like somebody who knows about technology, as you were saying about multiple platforms, etc. So maybe that is Angela's put thank you. Derek has put look forward to dropping down to detail thank you. Go on, Antonio.
Sorry, that's a no can do, John. I don't use QR codes and all.
Okay, no, that's fine. Yeah, no.
My traditional bloke.
Yeah, but you can always pop a comment in the chat if you thought it was useful. But it's you know, good conversation starter, very high level. That's an interesting one. Was it too high level? You know, did everyone get? You know, Mike H there kind of did a face. So is that your comment there, Mike? I'd love to know if you think it was too high level and that it wasn't engaging.
I'd say welcome and inclusive.
Yes, thank you, Antonio. Brilliant. We've got constructive, starting the conversation. So brilliant. Thank you, guys. I'm going to click on to the next one because we've got John. Do you want to close the meeting? I kind of railroaded you out. I'm really sorry.
Are you sure, Simon? Because sort of like this co-chair thing almost feels like you're in the chair and I'm watching.
I know, it's all right. I'm sorry. It's the only time I just let everybody know, it's the only time I get any power over John. All right. So, you know, after this, he'll definitely make sure I remember my place. I'm only joking, John. Come on, John.
Right. Colleagues, thank you very much for today. It's been a whistle-stop tour. I can't believe an hour and a half's gone already.
Yeah.
Which speaks about the amazing sort of discussion that goes on here and sort of on people's views, and it really does help us to sort of move things forward, which helps all the people across Birmingham that we work with. So really, I'm humbled by your support.
Yeah.
The next session is the 12th of July.
It's 5th.
Oh.
5th.
No, it's not.
When is it? It says the 12th there.
We've got two meetings. One is the citizen involvement team meeting that you've posted there, Adib, which is around co-production. But the next People for Public Services is on the 12th.
It's on the 19th, Simon.
Okay.
No, it's not.
I'll let you two decide when it is and send people an invite. Okay. Sometime in July, we're having another meeting.
Yeah.
Okay. Great. Right, and it may be at 2 o'clock. It may not be. Who knows?
No, it definitely is. It definitely is the 12th at 2 o'clock because I spoke with the speaker today. So
okay, right.
Yeah.
There we go. So you've got it from Simon. It's on the 12th at 2 o'clock.
Yeah.
And then there's also another session on the 5th of July at 10:30, which is the National Co-Production Week, where I have the pleasure of being able to do a short video. So I'll get them booted for that.
Yeah.
So, colleagues, thank you very much for this afternoon, and I look forward to seeing you all again soon. Take care.
Thank you all. Take care. Everyone have a safe day. Thank you. Bye-bye. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone. Bye. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone.
I think.